Hey y'all, welcome back to Exile Wargaming. Today, and as always, we're going to be talking about winning with Harlequins in competitive 10th edition Warhammer 40k with a battle report against Grey Knights. Now, first things first, let's go over the list. Today, we're bringing something a little bit different. We have a Solitaire, we have Yvrain and the Vizarch attached to a big unit of Harlequin troops. We have two Troop Masters, four troop units with fusion pistols, Starweaver, three Falcons, two D cannons, two Skyweaver units with Haywire and Glaives, and two units of Swooping Hawks. Now, this army comes in at 16 total units at 2,000 points on the nose. Now, our opponent is bringing a pretty heavy handed Grey Knights list. He has Kaldor Drago attached to a unit of Brotherhood Terminators, a Brotherhood Librarian attached to another unit of Brotherhood Terminators, a Grandmaster Dread Knight, a Strike Squad, two Land Raider Redeemers, two Nemesis Dread Knights, and a Calidus Assassin. Now, this is only 9 units total, but it's coming in at 1,995 points. Now we're going to be playing on Terrain Layout 4, Mission B, which is Priority Targets, Hidden Supplies, and Search and Destroy. Now this mission itself is kind of ridiculous. We have 6 total objectives, 4 in No Man's Land, and you can only score a max of 10 primary each turn. At the end of the game, each player will score 5 more primary for each objective marker they hold, so you can get an additional 15 at the end. But as far as what we're going to do in the early game, it's really just contain ourselves to 1 or 2 objectives and then push out in the last couple turns. That typically tends to be the strategy most players will adopt on a mission like this. So we deploy everything behind terrain. There's no use in us being overly aggressive at any point in time. We have a D cannon up top here just to hold and clear these 2 objectives. If our opponent decides to push there, we have another D cannon staged here. All of our Falcons are in the back. My game plan is essentially to push out a unit of Swooping Hawks, the Skyweavers, and a Falcon out to this corner, maybe with the Starweaver as well. We have Yvrain's brick right here in the middle to just push out and hold these 2 objectives if we need to later. Otherwise, we're just screening and waiting for our opponent to make a move. Our opponent, on the other hand, positions their Land Raider Redeemer here. There was nowhere else to really put the other Redeemer, so that is in strategic reserves. All the Dread Knights are back behind cover. You can pick up 3 units each turn, I believe, and the Calidus Assassin is positioned back here. Otherwise, there's not much interaction I foresee over these first couple turns. If I do get the first turn, I'm going to just target this Land Raider and see what happens. But really, it'll come down to whatever secondaries we draw. So unfortunately, we do win the dice roll and have to go first on a mission like this. That's not so great, but really, all we needed to do was give our opponents some targets, give them a reason to bring out their Dread Knights or their Terminators so that we have something to engage with later on. At the same time, we draw Secure No Man's Land and Assassination. Secure No Man's Land is going to be an easy 5 points. We're going to ditch Assassination afterwards for that extra CP. So really what we wanted to do is just screen our board and make sure that we don't get deep strike down too early for our opponent. Drago being able to come down somewhere with that 3-inch extra to his charge is kind of ridiculous. So we spread out Yvrain's unit back here. We move the Swooping Hawks up towards this objective to hold behind the wall. We shift our Starweaver out to screen this area as well, and the Falcon behind cover here so they can't get any angles with the Dread Knights, but he can poke out in later turns to cover this angle or possibly all the way up here as well. We shift the Skyweavers, the Falcon, and these other unit of Skyweavers out to target the Land Raider Redeemer. Now, this unit of Skyweavers does some great work. We put 9 devastating wounds on the Land Raider right off the rip. This other unit ends up putting 6 into it, and then the Falcon only needed to put in 2 more wounds. We ended up getting 4, and we dropped the Land Raider pretty handily right now, so we don't have to worry about it bullying us later on in the game. At the end of our movement phase, our opponent ends up picking up, I believe, a unit of Terminators and 2 of these Dread Knights, a Grandmaster Dread Knight and the other one. On our opponent's first turn, they end up drawing engage on all fronts and bring it down. Now, bring it down is pretty easy. They should get a simple 4 points just dropping this Falcon. Engage on all fronts ends up getting discarded for a CP later on. But they drop the Terminators with Librarian right here. They move up this Nemesis Dread Knight here to get some firing lanes on the Falcon. And then these two Dread Knight on the bottom end up positioning over here. The first is the Grandmaster Dread Knight. If he's targeted in the shooting phase, he could just pick up and reposition somewhere else on the board, I believe once per game. And then he used a stratagem to give this Dread Knight can't be shot outside of 12 inches. So kind of the lone op stratagem himself. So these should be pretty safe. But the Nemesis Dread Knight here ends up firing into the Falcon, does a good number of wounds, and then it gets finished off by this unit of Terminators and the Brotherhood Librarian afterwards. Blows up the Falcon. Mistake number one for us is we did not put the Vizark in the unit with Yvrain. We ended up putting it here with the unit of troops in the Falcon, just hoping he would be able to do something a little bit different. Unfortunately, he's kind of stranded here now as all these troops get out. These Dread Knights end up targeting, or one, the Grandmaster, ends up targeting the Skyweavers. They drop him pretty handily. I didn't have any hope. He hit everything. 4-up saves are sometimes really good, but at 3 damage apiece, he was able to bring him down pretty easily. This other Dread Knight over here fired into these Skyweavers, and we made the saves. So we end up losing a Falcon and a unit of Skyweavers in exchange for a Land Raider Redeemer. Pretty even trade, if you ask me. On our turn two, we end up drawing Area Denial and Extend Battle Lines, which is perfect this early in the game. So we're going to get Area Denial without any issue, and we're going to be able to get Extend Battle Lines. Walk out at the end of this turn with an extra 10 in secondaries, putting us up 15 on our opponent. We move this Falcon out from cover here to get angles on the Nemesis Dread Knight. The Skyweavers stay exactly where they are. I don't want to get overwatched or anything like that. Our Falcon down low pokes out to target the Grandmaster Dread Knight. He ends up picking up and shifting over to this side of the board. And then we just move our Yvrain brick out to this section of the midboard. The troop that was in the Starweaver got out to screen the remainder of this backfield. So I think I'm pretty good over here. Everything should be screened. I don't think you can bring in any of the Terminators or anything like that into our backfield later on. In the shooting phase, the Skyweavers end up firing into the Nemesis Dread Knight. So does the Falcon. We bring it down pretty handily. Skyweavers are just so good into these. But Falcons and their pulse lasers are really good as well. That toughness 8 on the Dread Knights is not so great against the strength 9 pulse lasers. So we bring that down pretty easily. Beyond this, the D cannons end up firing into this unit of Terminators. We're getting blast. It sounds like it's going to be a great option. Make the saves, and we only ended up killing one of them, and they're going to be brought back next turn. So it's like it never happened, but they are -1 to shoot from here. So we leave the turn with a 5 in area denial and a 5 in extend battle lines. In our opponent's turn two, they pick up the Grandmaster Dread Knight. He drops down over here. They pick up another Nemesis Dread Knight. He ends up dropping down over here. They pick up a unit of Strikes and the Calidus Assassin. The Calidus Assassin comes back down over here because their secondaries were Investigate Signals and Capture Enemy Outposts. So this Dread Knight is going to investigate signals. This Calidus Assassin is going to investigate signals. The Land Raider Redeemer comes off this back board edge. There's nowhere else they can really target. D cannons are kind of phenomenal against Land Raiders. And then the unit of Strikes comes back down on our home objective. That 3-inch deep strike. They have OC2. They end up taking our home field with like half an inch to spare. If I would have just moved over one of these swooping hawks just a hair, we'd have been fine, but I didn't think about it. And this is where we are. So he gets Capture Enemy Outpost. The Falcon's OC is only 3, and the unit itself over here is he was able to get 2 guys on the objective. So he's going to end up getting 8 for Capture Enemy Outpost and 4 for Investigate Signals. We thought we did really good work last turn. Turns out he did even better. In the shooting phase, this Grandmaster Dread Knight drops this unit of Skyweavers. Everyone else just kind of stays where they are, and he focuses on scoring. Now on our turn 3, we end up drawing Bring It Down and Deploy Teleport Homers. So we're just going to focus as much as we can on scoring these secondaries. We don't really want to get into a trade war at this point in the game. The longer we can go keeping up on the board, the more beneficial it's going to be for us in the long run once we hit turn 5. So we go for Bring It Down. We end up moving this Falcon that was positioned over here up top to get an angle on this Grandmaster Dread Knight. We move this Falcon up top here and shift the Star Weaver down this way. We don't have range on the Bright Lance, but we do have range on the Pulse Lasers. Everything ends up bouncing off the Grandmaster Dread Knight. He stayed out of range of our D cannons as well. And then all the firing back here from the Swooping Hawks and some of the middling fire ends up going into these strikes, as well as the D cannons, and we're able to bring this unit down. Beyond this, we move our troop unit with the Vizark out into our opponent's deployment zone, and we deploy teleport homers here, so we are going to walk away with 5 points in secondaries at least this turn. Everything else just kind of holds position, screening wherever we need to go. At the end of this turn, we did realize that when I moved the Falcon, he could have used Mist of Deimos and brought these strikes out here, which is probably what he should have done. It was just too late. We realized it on the following turn, what that would have looked like. So that could have made a big impact in the game. It may be one of the deciding factors. Now at the end of our turn 3, our opponent picked up Keldor Drago's unit of Terminators, the Grandmaster Dread Knight, the Nemesis Dread Knight, and the Calidus Assassin that was back here. He draws Overwhelming Force and Tempting Target. We selected this bottom objective to be the tempting target. He ends up discarding it in the command phase and pulls Behind Enemy Lines instead. So we're working against Overwhelming Force and Behind Enemy Lines. He drops Keldor Drago's unit right up top here, and we'll have an easy 6-inch charge into this D cannon and should be able to push forward onto our home objective afterwards. The Land Raider Redeemer moves up as far as he can go into this angle, stays out of D cannon range. This Nemesis Dread Knight and the Calidus Assassin both drop down this portion of the board here. When we get into the shooting portion of this, these Harlequin troops had no chance. The Dread Knight, the Flamers, and the Calidus Assassin did pretty quick work to this unit down here. Otherwise, we move directly to the charge phase. So Drago's unit ends up barreling through the D cannon, easily destroys that, and then moves into the Falcon. He will score a 3 on Behind Enemy Lines and tie up this Falcon the next turn. Now in our turn 4, we end up drawing Cleanse and Behind Enemy Lines, which both should be pretty attainable at this point. We use this unit of Harlequin troops with Yvrain to cleanse both of these objectives. We shift the Falcon that was up top here down low to get an angle on the Land Raider Redeemer or anything else that may want to drop down. I believe we shoot into this Nemesis Dread Knight. Then we use Fire and Fade to get our Star Weaver all the way from back here into our opponent's deployment zone. So worst case scenario is we're going to walk out of this turn with 8 points on secondaries. Now we're trapped back here with this unit of Terminators and Keldor Drago. We do not get to shoot anything but the Falcon into this combat. If we were able to throw grenades, we were able to use fusion pistols, all of it, this would have been a very, very simple combat. But as I've stated before, Harlequin troops by themselves, without a lot of support, are not that great. So being able to just dump anything you can into your opponent all at once is sometimes the answer. Now in the charge phase, we do just that. We pile in the Troop and Troop Master getting rerolls coming out of this Falcon, the Solitaire, and another unit of troops coming in from the Star Weaver that we disbarked earlier on in the game. Now, troop are pretty good by themselves if you can use fusion pistols and grenades. Unfortunately, we don't get to do that, but we are able to bring down each and every one of these Terminators. We bring Keldor Drago down to just a couple wounds. He is able to clap back and kill the Solitaire, though, which is a big deal for us. End of our turn, our opponent picked up both of the Dread Knights and a unit of Terminators, as well as the Calidus Assassin. He draws Deploy Teleport Homers and Area Denial. So he ends up dropping the Calidus Assassin right in our deployment zone here, gets 5 on Deploy Teleport Homers, moves the Land Raider Redeemer up towards the middle of the board, and then drops the unit of Terminators off over here, they end up making a charge in the charge phase into this unit of Harlequin troops to try to deny us area denial. They end up surviving. He kills 4 of them after we use feign retreat. It's pretty good. And the Star Weaver that moved over using fire and fade last turn just gets absolutely bodied by the Land Raider Redeemer. This Nemesis Dread Knight fires into the Falcon, brings it down to just a few wounds remaining afterwards. Now, at the end of our opponent's last turn, we were at 28 total secondary points, and our opponent was at 27. So it's a tight game. We've both been getting 10s on primary the entire time. It's going to come down to this. We end up bringing up both of our units of Swooping Hawks, and then we draw Investigate Signals and Engage on all fronts. Now, this was difficult to try to math out. So what we ended up doing is shifting this Falcon, decided it was better to just investigate signals in this back corner than fire into anywhere else. We moved one of the units of Harlequin troops that was fighting Drago's unit last turn into this back area to investigate signals. We dropped our Swooping Hawks in the back corners of each of these units, and then positioned the unit of Harlequin troops with Yvrain out front to try to kill this Land Raider. Our other objective was engage on all fronts, so we are going to get that, but I don't know what my opponent's going to draw for the next turn, and I feel like getting rid of this Land Raider is going to mean everything. So we move them out, he overwatches, ends up killing 6 Harlequin troops, but it leaves all of our fusion pistols and Yvrain afterwards. Between the D cannon right here firing into the Land Raider, this Falcon firing into the Land Raider, the fusion pistols and grenades, we are able to bring down the Redeemer. The following turn, if we need to, we can just phantasm that troop back and score pretty easily. At the end of our turn, our opponent does lose the Calidus Assassin to combat with this Harlequin troop unit, but he brings up the unit of Brotherhood Terminators with the Librarian and one of the Nemesis Dread Knights. Now, this back objective is sticky, so they're going to get that. God, that ability is so good. And try to push forward. He ends up drawing Storm Hostile Objective and Defend Stronghold. So he's going to get Defend Stronghold for 3 no matter what. The question is, how does he get onto the next objective? Can he take it over? So he had 2 options. One was to charge this Nemesis Dread Knight into this unit of Harlequin troops. When they dropped down, we Phantasma. We only got a 2, so I couldn't get them far enough away from the wall to make this unengageable. He ends up dropping the Terminators down here and charges into this unit of Swooping Hawks. So he will get Storm Hostile Objective for 5 and Defend Stronghold for 3, but it's going to come down to the end of the game. When we would tally up our points, I would end up getting 10 at the end from our home objective and this unit of Harlequin troops. If he does make this charge and kills a couple troop, he'll end up getting a 15 on the secondary objective, and we will end in a tie. If he does not kill 2 of our models right here, we end up winning the game by 5 points. I believe 4 points is what it came down to. So it all came down to a single dice roll. We used Feigned Retreat. He fired his 5 attacks. He ended up hitting with 3 of them. We made a save. We missed a save. I had a reroll for a final 4+ save, and we missed it. So this did charge into this objective, but it comes down to a dice roll. We would either tie, or it would go to the Harlequins at the end of the game. And I would much rather walk away with a tie. Dice roll on a 4-up to decide a game always feels a little bad, so we will end it there. This was a killer game. Kind of boring, to be honest, but it was amazing just watching all the tactical plays. We both knew that we can score a good number of secondaries. We were going to keep up on primary. This mission itself is so ridiculous, especially if you have something like sticky objectives. There's no reason why you don't walk away from priority targets with hidden supplies, maxing out almost your primary. The end of the game came down to it for me. I thought I was going to be able to get at least a 10 on extra primary at the end, but him contesting that final spot really did the trick. It would have been 100 to 95 for the Harlequins. Unfortunately, the 4-up turns it right into a draw. Now, I do think we have a good number of strengths into Grey Knights. We have phenomenal movement. We have really good screening. The D cannons are excellent at keeping them from getting into advantageous positions where they can just start nickel and diming us with all their massive firepower. Our Falcons are really efficient into the Dread Knights. Pulse lasers are pretty dang good when they're wounded on threes. Skyweavers are very good as well. The Brain Brick seems like it did a pretty good job. It didn't do much, but it held that center objective. It got us area denial, denied some other points. We cleansed. I think it made its points back pretty easily. And then really just the number of activations we have makes it difficult for the Grey Knights player. When they have 5 or 6 units that can engage on ours, again, Star Weavers become very good. Falcons, just as transports protecting our units, become very good. And it just seems like we have the ability to threat overload a certain section of the board. Now, on the flip side, it is really difficult to engage with a lot of these units with our troops all at once. A single unit of Harlequins coming out of a Falcon is never going to be enough to drop an entire unit of Terminators. We need to combine fire with things like Mystic Deimos, with the Lone Op strat. It's very difficult to nickel and dime them as well. Our troops do very little aside from just actions and screening. We were fortunate enough to be able to get a few of our troops into combat, but that's only because he came to us on our home field objective. At the end of it all, I really think that this game can go either way. We ended up scoring 45 on primary, and then 40 on secondary. Our opponent ended up scoring 50 on primary and 35 on his secondaries. It just came down to that final turn. We were very fortunate to get investigate signals and engage on all fronts. He ended up getting storm hostile objective and defend stronghold, which I think were some of the best options for him at the time as well. So really, really great game. I don't know how this shakes up overall. I think it'll come down to experience in the matchup, but I don't think it's a good or a bad matchup either way. So I hope this gives you a really good idea what it looks like playing this army against another army who decides to really not commit. What we can do with our secondaries, what we can do if someone else decides to just sit back, we can definitely keep up with a game plan like that. Either way, so we have a lot of flexibility. This game was very, very unique. Both of us pretty much decided we're just going to go for the score and play the games on turn 4 and turn 5 for the most part. But I really appreciate you watching. Thank you again. Please like, share, and subscribe. If there's any other games you would like me to try to get on the channel, I will do my absolute best. Unfortunately, I don't know everyone from every faction. I have a few players in my group that I play with who have a number of different armies, so you may see some things that look similar. Sometimes we proxy units, and I'm more than happy to do that. It just sometimes takes away from the experience, but I appreciate y'all. Thanks again, and take care.